Hi, here is a little talk about storytelling for writers. I always think of storytelling as an oral practice, so it doesn't necessarily make sense to think of it as a written practice, but storytelling is also a kind of writing. We tell stories, right, when we write. And I always like to think about writing as a first coming from our voice, right? And our voice is spoken. So there is a way in which all writing is told. All right. So, why we tell stories? There's so many reasons to pass on histories, to unravel mysteries, to entertain, to connect, to teach. I want you to think as you go around this week, like, why do you tell stories? Think about stories you tell day to day to friends, and why do you listen to stories? What do you get out of them? So, that'll help you as we think about this lesson. So histories. So I think of storytelling coming from this oral tradition, right, where it was like people around a fire telling a story that might have sounded like mythology, but it was the history of the people. We even see these written in pictographs on stone walls or stones and stone cave walls. Mysteries. This is the way that origin stories are told and still often told in indigenous cultures, but in all religions and spiritual practices, there are stories told about how the world and people are created. Well, in all religions and different cultures, there's different versions of how we came to be, and the scientific version of the um, Big Bang theory and the way the universe was developed and the Earth. We've often seen that in stories or movies, or parts of it used that way. And it's a way of helping people understand who maybe don't have the science head. So, yeah, just there's so many ways that stories are used. So to connect, also, here's who I am. Now you know me better. This is, when we're getting to know each other, um, or when I want someone to know me more deeply. Here's who I am. Now you know you aren't alone. Many times when I read a book, especially a nonfiction book, and it resonates with me, or that person went through an experience that I felt like nobody else had gone through, it helped me feel less alone. So there's a sense of connection. Creating relationship between storyteller and listener, writer and reader, and then communal listeners, readers, or viewers. So there's always relationship when you write any kind of writing. And I feel like we think the writing's done when we finish writing it, but my experience and my view of this is that the piece isn't done until it's read, because it's read it's created in collaboration with the reader, because the reader puts their meaning on it. They read it through the lens of their own experience. And one thing I want to say about communal listeners and readers and viewers is there's the sense of how community is created, like in movie theaters, or even just all of us watching the same show that might be a cultural phenomenon, even if we're watching it alone. And yeah, and then, or, around the fire, things like that. So to entertain, even if stories have a goal of passing on information or creating relationship, they are heard and created because they entertain and engage. This is why it's such a great way of passing on information. It's such a good way of making a pitch or a proposal, is to have a story. You could say, like, imagine there's this girl in Merced who lost her parents. They might tell a story about a girl who had some things happen to her, in life, and that they need this funding to help her and other girls like her to have some project that they're pitching, right? But these stories that they tell, or the story of what it will look like, can help create emotional connection or emotional appeal to the listeners of any kind of writing or pitch. So this is one of the reasons that we make stories. We hear stories that are morality stories. You might hear scary stories that you're about, to warn children from like running away or doing other things. There's like the different ghosts and spirits. I was growing up, it was like the boogeyman or something like that. And then there is, even though these seem like passive experiences, reading, watching, or listening to a story, you're not really in action. There is a physical experience that happens with the journey of the story arc, where there's anticipation and then relief when the next part of the story is told. And this comes about because it's a very ancient tradition where all across all these cultures and throughout time, there was a similar arc of the hero's journey. And you'll see it in every superhero movie where there's this, this new challenge. Often it's like just the unassuming person that has to have this challenge, and they go through these learnings, and then they end up face to face with their enemy, and it's the main battle. But because that is like also in our DNA from being heard from centuries and centuries, it's if we know how to listen to the story and what to expect. And it's sort of like in music. I don't know, like if you play a minor note and you don't play the note below it to resolve it, it creates like this dissonance in your head, like this anticipation that's never alleviated. And then it is true that audiences in theaters, there was a study in live theaters where audiences' heartbeats started to match up. So there is a communal experience that happens as well. So catharsis is something that can happen to anybody. It's a major change or a major release of emotions. Often it happens when there's like a big event that we go through in our lives, or we're startled, or just have to release a lot of emotions for a lot of times, and it creates a change in us. And so when we watch stories or hear stories or read stories, I think about watching because the word catharsis was when I first heard it and talked about it was when I was reading and studying Greek plays in my history of theater class in college. And this view of like the characters like going through these major shifts and these major realizations that are pretty heavy. And it allows the audience to go through that experience of realization and relief as well. So we get to have that experience without actually having to walk through it. Like we get to cry when somebody dies without actually somebody having to die. And it can help us go through our emotions that we need to go through. I remember there was a breakup that I went through, and I just went to see a lot of movies. It was before Netflix and the internet even, and I just like went to movies that made me cry, and I just cried and cried, and I needed to release those emotions. I'm very sensitive. So anyways, so that's sort of why we do it. And there's other ways to have catharsis too. I think about it like, oh, yeah, if you're going to do something, it's almost like burning off your emotions. And I think about that, talking about breakups, like sometimes people like burn everything that their ex gave them for, some kind of letting go. So what do you want your reader to experience? We see now all these ways in which writing can create connection, storytelling can entertain, it can delight, it can create catharsis. So even though this story is one that you're writing for this class, let's imagine you're writing it for the possibility of sharing it with somebody who you can change or entertain, or they can grow from, or get to know you better, or feel less alone. And if you want, I will help you with any of the things you write in this class to polish it up and try to get it published or put on a website or used for whatever reason. So I want you to think of your writing in this class as not just in the context of this class. So think about what experience you want your readers to have. What do you want your reader to experience? You should try to experience while writing the story. So write to discover. What new can you uncover about yourself and your personal history? It's so much more fun to write when you're trying to discover and you're just not writing everything you know. What don't you know? Write into that. What are you curious about? And it's okay if you have parts of your story that you don't know everything about. And try to entertain yourself through writing. Like make yourself laugh, make yourself cry. Write something you'd love to read. Don't write it for anybody, but write it towards like the kind of story you love to read or you always wanted to read. So here's 2 reflective writing prompts I'll leave you with. I'm not in class, so we're not doing our free writing today. So this will be an assignment that you'll upload it. You'll either upload it or you can screenshot it and upload it or show it to me on Wednesday. You're going to write as quickly as you can without stopping, starting with this sentence. When you read the story, I want you to. What experience do you want your reader to have? What do you want them to get out of reading the story? And then the second one is write as quickly as you can without stopping. What are some cathartic moments I've had in my life? So just to get the sense of what catharsis means and how big it is. And don't worry if you don't get what that means. Don't overthink it. Just write as fast as you can. What has triggered change? What has made you help purge your emotions? All right, and go forth and revise. You're going to write those prompts. You're going to think about audience. You're going to revise your piece for Wednesday. We're going to have peer review groups, and you can use the what you discovered from the exercise we did and from looking at the Stephen King piece and this idea of like, why are you writing this? What do you want the audience to get? So I'm saying write with abandon, with joy, with a sense of urgency, like you have something to find out, like you need to know how the story ends. Write as if you're watching a movie and you're on the edge of your seat in. Write as if you're on the edge of your seat. Thank you.